This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And for those of you who listen to Avoid the Maze, you already know that we go on a journey with my guests. And the journey can be very similar to yours, or maybe it's much different. However, I think as you listen to my guest today, Boris, and is it Cherniak?
You got it completely
I
perfectly.
got
Cherniak.
it right. I'm always messing up people's names. But Boris is going to be talking to us about his book, and I'm planning on getting it because I understand it's now an Audible. So that way, as I'm going from one place to another, I can be listening to it, which is great. And the name of the book is You Can Do Anything.
And I actually have a copy right here that literally a picture of me saying you can do anything, and you absolutely can. So that's my message to the world, and I'm so happy to talk about it.
Well, and Boris, what got you to decide that this was a message that not only did you want to share, but you knew was necessary to share?
It's not really a message. It's the story of my life. When people said you can't, I did. And that's literally how that title came about, because constantly throughout every part of my personal life and every part of my life in public, it ended up being, but you can't do this. And then I ended up doing it over and over and over again. Let me tell you just a little bit about me. I'm originally a comedian, a comedy hypnotist. That's the medium that I present my entertainment through. And, as you start up, nobody believes in you. And who are you to dare to succeed? And I ended up succeeding and exceeding my own expectations over and over and over again, from traveling from Japan to Dubai to Amsterdam, Bermuda. I can just keep naming names of where I've been because somebody said you can't. So the title is You Can Do Anything. I literally implore that. It's part of every presentation that I do. You can do anything if you just change your mindset, change the way you think, change the way you act, and have a vision. I actually call it prophetic thinking. It's like a prophecy, something that's in the dream that you may have had becomes a reality.
Well, you are my guest today, and today is a very special day in my life. So I'm going to interject this so that our listeners can understand that I truly believe in the message. My son, who is 31 years old, when he was 6, was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, but very high functioning. And the school sort of tried to downplay his intelligence, and for years were treating him as if he just didn't belong. And we were at a meeting with a psychologist one day, and she looked at my son and she said, I just want you to know your future is going to be living in a halfway house doing menial labor. And my son was about 12, 13 years old at the time, and he looked at her and he said, no, I'm either going to play baseball or work for a baseball team. And she looked at me and my husband and she said, don't let him dream. With that, my husband walked out of the room, wanted nothing to do with her. It was that day that my son started to change. It was like, you're not going to treat me like I'm dumb. You're not going to treat me like I can't do it, because I'm going to prove to you I can. So let's jump to today, which is April 18th, 2022. So almost 20 years after this psychologist said, you can't. He works for the Guardians, who once were the Cleveland Indians, are now the Cleveland Guardians. But he has, in the last 2 weeks, he has been interviewing with a number of major teams, and he is now juggling offers. So can you do it? You can. So Now let's get back to you. What were some of the things that you were told you couldn't do?
I will interject on my own story of exactly the same thing that happened to me in high school. If you know the name Boris, last name Cherniak, difficult to pronounce. Guess where I come from? I come from Russia. And my parents brought me as a little kid to North America with an accent and the meager means to get anything along. Yet, in one of the grades, I had an English teacher who at some point in time suggested that I should probably go to an ESL class, English as a second language. And I dared to succeed learning English. And guess what? Now I wrote a book. So it comes all around in a
Right.
circle. But there was a teacher at some point in time that did not believe in me. And there's always going to be somebody who will not believe in you. Could be a friend, a parent, anybody who just comes across your path. I implore you to take that negativity and switch it to a complete positivity where you use that to fuel the fire, to get you ahead, to make things out of nothing that could not have been done before you. And that's what I try to relate, because I was part of it. This was the whole thing. There were people who would not help me just because they did not believe in my abilities, and yet my abilities, I knew my own abilities. You know your own abilities. Whoever's watching, listening at this point in time, you have that ability. You just don't know how much you have. So find the fire within you to just dare to get ahead.
And, that's one of the things that my parents taught us as we were growing up. I have one brother who is very artistic, and he can draw, he can perform, he is a musician in his own rights. He's never taken any lessons in any of it. And as a young child, him being my older brother, I felt like, oh, I'm worthless. Look at all the things he can do. Well, what can I do? And my mother always said to me, you'll find out someday, rather than noticing maybe something and trying to enrich me with it. And it took me a long time. I thought, I'm the ugly duckling. I just can't do it. And when my father would hear me say that, he would get very angry. And he wasn't a violent man, but you would see it in his face. It was like, don't say it, just go figure it out. And
Exactly.
as an adult, that's what I had to do, because it was like, I don't want to see everybody else succeed and be on the outside looking in.
Actually, I'll tell you this. This is my experience, which is a little bit odd. I was always different. And I claim that as a claim to fame or a deterrent. And what set me aside from everybody else's over the years is what got me ahead. Believe it or not, I'm a comedy hypnotist. There's many others. I'm not the only one. But when a package came across, let's say, TV producer's desk, along with maybe 10, 20, 30 others, I stood out. And that's what made me different. And talk about different. I'm quirky. I got a little bit of an accent. I don't do things the same way as everybody else. So I was not a cookie cutter material. And that truthfully got me on to TV shows, and I can start naming them. Maury, they called me up saying, we want somebody who's a little bit different, but who can deal with this. On Maury, I help people with weird phobias. So that actually qualifies me to discuss anything that has to do with fears, which fits into the subject that you're covering today, where we are afraid to make ourselves feel better about us. Because the nature of human mind is you think of negativity first, and then you move on to the positive. So when you actually overcome that point of it and you become the positive thinker, the glass is always half full rather than half empty. I can do it rather than I don't think I can. It's a language, the language that's within your mind, and you talk to yourself. We all talk to ourselves. You
Right.
called yourself stupid, you called yourself smart, and oh, I should get a pat on the back for this one. Well, you should always get a pat on the back for whatever you do right, and disregard whatever's negative.
Well, you know, positivity for many of us is difficult, especially if you grew up when I did in the 50s and 60s, because, we weren't supposed to tell people how great we were. Today it's a little bit different. Today's youth do. But I learned this about 8 years ago. I was with a coach, and the coach asked me to, on a piece of paper, put down 10 things that I really liked about myself. And it probably took me 20 minutes to put the first thing down. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, you must have so many because you're going through them and trying to figure out which are the best 10."
Oh, that's a very positive feedback.
Yep. And I looked at her and I said, "I'm not sure." She said, "Okay, well, that's okay." And then I wrote down the second one. But what I was writing down weren't really things that were necessarily positive about me. They were my features. And she said, "I want you to dig deeper. Okay. What is it that you really like about your smile?" And I looked at her and I said, "Because it makes me look happy. And if I'm happy, maybe I can transcend that to somebody else." And we started talking about all the different things I could do. But I never thought of it that way prior. And that's why I love coaching, because you're not going to tell me to smile, to feel good, and to bring it out around me. But we can talk about what that smile does.
Right. And as you walk into a room with a smile, the other people smile back at you and you start the whole process. And that's what it's all about. A lot of times we don't even realize or recognize our own strengths and our own abilities. So a lot of times I'm asked, and I'm sort of in the same boat. I do the same thing as coaching on stage, and instead of being one-on-one, I deal with the masses, whether it's television or whether it's live performance. There's always an object of how can we instill something that people can use after the fact, long after the show is finished, long after they've seen the TV program, whatever that might involve.
Sure.
So I try to instill that positivity as well. So yes, absolutely.
So about what age were you when maybe this sort of like light bulb went off in your head and you said, "Oh, positivity, I can do it"?
Well, I was always a pretty positive person. My friends would often describe me as an eternal optimist. So
Okay.
that was a part of this. What I do now, believe it or not, was a hobby. I went through college, university, graduated in computer programming and analysis,
Okay.
sort of to please my parents that their kid went to school, finished. I was really, really good at it. Yet on the weekends and evenings, I would go out and perform. And this was starting to overpower my complete schedule, where I became a consultant in computers and would walk into interviews saying, "I can't do this date, oh, and this date too." And they still hired me. Just because when you're good enough and people want your expertise, they will bring you in. But on the weekends, that's what I did. I kept it very quiet for the longest time, to the point where people at work did not know what the guy was doing that. And talk about positivity. Oh, nobody can represent you in show business the way an agent can. You can never tell somebody how amazing you are unless there's an agent that can do it. So at some point in time, while working and talking about keeping it very quiet, I became my own agent. So the guy that would call was the agent for me. So I was represented. "Hi, I'd like to talk to you about this person," and they would hire that person, except that person came sounding like me.
I love that.
All right. It didn't last very long, but while I was keeping that quiet, that was specific way of people not knowing. I had an alter ego that would make that phone call with a different name. The name was Robert Clark.
Well, we're living in different times. I mean, the last 2 years have really changed most of us. Okay. Um, I know that when the pandemic started here, especially in Ohio, I was 1 week out of knee surgery. And so I didn't realize so much it was a pandemic because I was still at home recuperating. And once I really could get out, um, I just heard all these people just complaining, I can't go where I used to go. I can't do the things that I was doing. And even my husband and son, who were on furlough, said the same things. And I said, but we can do other things. And we started creating those other things that we could do. And my son had always wanted to write, and he started writing more. My husband has always been into photography, and he started going through all of his old slides and negatives because he didn't have time any time before that. And so sometimes we can take these down moments or down 2 years, as it turns out to be. We can recreate ourselves, but we got to look at the purpose. And that looks like what you did. You had your 9-to-5 job, you were good at it, made mom and dad happy.
But very happy, absolutely.
But what made you happy is what you did on the weekend.
Right, it fulfilled me. And that's what I always tell people, go after your dreams. There's nothing wrong with dreaming, but not making a reality is something that you end up regretting. So never regret a thing. Don't look back saying, I should have. And always move forward. By the way, you're talking about Cleveland and pandemics. I'm very familiar with both. My job specifically involves people interaction, which the pandemic completely took away for the last about year and a half or so. Things are coming back now, which is so wonderful to see. I just came back from performing in Atlantic City. So things are moving forward, right. And the people are starting to take the masks off and not be afraid. But as far as the dreams, you end up shifting. And I've done this, and I told the story before. Howie Mandel is partially a friend, partially somebody that I came across with. We're both from Toronto. And at the same time, I've appeared on the Howie Mandel show in the 90s, way back when, twice. And after that, they ended up canceling the show. So at some point in time, I was sitting around having lunch with Howie and his road manager, complaining. I will admit that I was complaining, saying, if the show didn't get canceled, I could have been a regular. I did so well. The ratings were phenomenal. Out of Howie came two words that stuck with me more than anything ever should. Everything ends. This is before all of the fame that Howie Mandel
right.
as up to date, from Deal or No Deal, America's Got Talent, all of the other shows. So you constantly have to keep reinventing yourself, constantly have to keep finding a new high, a new beginning, a new something, whether it's in your personal life, family life. So that's what I've been striving for. And thank you for bringing up the subject, because the pandemic sort of stopped things, but you reinvent yourself. For me personally, I had to go online and do Zoom meetings,
right.
And Zoom presentations where I dealt, instead of performing, because I don't think 100% what I do could completely relate on the other side, but I delivered a presentation called Mental Health Toolbox, which encompasses all of my background in psychology, all of my background in hypnosis, and being able to reprogram the mind, because I truly believe that your mind is a computer.
Oh, it is.
Somebody from the beginning till now programmed you, whether it's society, authority figures, but if you can program something, you can always reprogram it. And if you take the right program to create the positivity rather than the one that concentrates on negativity, that's when things change. When you take that fork in the road and you say, I should have gone this way, I should have gone this way, and then you make an educated guess and say, this is the way it should be, and I'm not looking back.
Well, you know, it's a lot of interesting points that you're bringing up, because I took on a job, back in early 2000s. My husband was an IT programmer, and he just turned to me one day and he said, you're going to be my trainer, and we're going to go to corporate offices that, you know, need something written. I will write the program for them and you'll train. And I looked at him and I said, what do I know about that? He said, do you know how to use a computer? I said, well, yes, I do. And he goes, okay, I'll tell you, I'll give you the program. I'll walk you through it, what they have to do, but you figure out how to teach them. And I thought, he's not going to go get those accounts. And within a week, he had 5 accounts. And he said to me, now, are you ready? And the first day I walked into a corporate lunch program, I felt like an imposter. But once I started talking to them, because I knew the program and I had asked them ahead of time, who's going to be using it? How are you going to be using it? I started adapting my training to what they needed. So they didn't have to know from A to Z, but this group had to know A, B, and C, and had to know that if they did it right, the next group could do the next part of the program.
Wonderful.
And I walked out of there that first day and I just was beaming, because I didn't know I had it in me. But that's what I decided. You know what? I'm not going to be afraid anymore. And if I make a mistake, I'll learn from it. And it
Always.
sounds like that what you're telling all of us as well, that if you don't take that first step, you'll never know.
Right. Well, you can sit on the couch all day long and nothing will happen, or you go after something and you will fail. And I should probably say this right off the bat. I have failed a million times, have not stopped failing, yet the few things that succeeded made a big difference. That all of a sudden teaches you how to react to when things don't go the way you want it to. And they will over and over again until you figure out how to make it more universal. And just like in any job, you will screw up, and you'll screw up big. And if by any chance you do screw up, learn from it and move forward. And next time when you're faced with the same situation, you know how to avoid or make it as minuscule as possible.
So let's go back to the book. You said, here you are migrating from Russia. You had an accent. English was your second language. And now you write a book. And obviously you wrote the book as an adult. What do you see in that book that says, I've made it?
The book is a story of my life. From the moment that my parents even conceived the fact that they wanted to have a better life for their kids, to the point where I decided that I'm the only one that can be relied upon to get me to the next point. And it's ethics. It's the ability to constantly be on something that you want. So your dream, I always made a joke that I set my dreams higher than I can ever achieve them. And then if you do, then you have even more of a distance to set. Now, the goals, they don't go away. You have dreams, you want money, you want cars, whatever it is that you are looking forward towards, that's what should drive you. And I don't know, even in the olden days, I was working with opening acts that would sleep till noon while I was getting up earlier on and making sure that I have the next set of weeks taken care of while I'm on the road. So it's just a matter of somebody believing in your own abilities, that you are going to be the one that drives you. So if you're looking for somebody to say you should do this, that would be your mother, who probably nagged you at some point in time. Now it's time for you to be that person inside your own head. So have that conversation. And believe it or not, it keeps going on, whether you're awake, asleep. You know how you sleep on an idea and then you come up with the answer the next morning. The mind does not stop working. So if the only thing that you give it to concentrate on, it'll get you there, whether you like it or not.
And you said something important earlier about those voices in our head. So many of us think, oh, that makes me mentally ill. I'm hearing yes, I'm hearing no, like the old cartoons. And I remember once saying something to my mother, I just wish the voices in my head would go away. And she looked at me and she said, you have voices in your head? What are they saying to you? And she had this very serious conversation with me. And as I was telling her about all the negative things they were saying, she said, I guess you haven't been talking to your father lately, because your father is always talking about positive things. And so I thought, oh, I can put his voice in my head. So I went and sat down with him. And it probably was at a point when I was ready to start experiencing who I was, not who my mother thought I was, not who my father thought I was. And I sat there basically at his side and I said to him, tell me what you've been afraid of. Tell me the things that you've learned from. And it was amazing that some of his fears when he was younger were my fears at that age. And it was like, this is normal. This is, I'm not the only one. And I was so glad that my mother redirected me, because otherwise I think I probably would have not flourished the way I have. And it's taken me a long time, but I certainly appreciate who I am. And I can see that's how you feel about yourself as well.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the only, nobody will like you until you like yourself. It's that simple. But I will refer to, in hypnosis, there's actually the field of how your brain works and how to get it to a specific direction. There's a school that there's two minds. There's the conscious and the subconscious. So I contribute that to the voices that you're talking about, because with a hypnotist, all the hypnotist does is confuses the conscious and moves directly to the subconscious. But the both of the minds are always working. So it's the mind that when you are awake and aware of what's going on, and then the mind that's controlling all of the everything from bodily functions to the thought of where should I be moving my foot next.
Interesting. We don't think of that, do we? That our mind is
Not normally. It's just as a hypnotist, I have learned how to speed up the process of getting you to do something, and even on stage to visualize something that might not even be there. So I'm the guy responsible for the intangibles, meanwhile playing sort of a straight guy to a funny routine.
So talking about hypnosis, I was hypnotized once. And when I was told, I hope I didn't lose you.
Yeah, you did lose me. I just realized the camera was not plugged in.
That's all right.
It just shut down on me. Let me put you on a different camera.
Okay.
Preferences. I apologize. And
no problem. We learned from our mistakes, don't we?
Yeah, I set it up today. I just got back in. Well, that's
there you go.
A little bit more. But let me plug the camera in. Would that be okay?
That's okay. No problem.
I hope you're able to edit this.
Well, even if we can't, you know what? I want people to know that life happens.
Life happens, and let's go on. I will do this as we speak, and then I'll switch things over, because the camera, for one reason or another, did not get plugged in, and usually has a ton of juice in the battery. Oh. I apologize, Candace.
No, don't you worry about it, Boris, because it can happen to anybody at any time.
There we go. Plug it in and go. I have a rather elaborate setup which keeps changing.
Our listeners get to see
Get
what
that.
Boris does in his spare time, where he hooks
All
things.
right. Yeah, it's a rather elaborate setup, which did not get quite reset.
There you go. Okay.
I apologize.
No problem. But I was asking
All right,
about
then I'm not sorry. Things happen for a reason.
Yes, they do. So my question to you is, I was hypnotized once, and it was at a high school thing. My parents were in the audience, and I was told afterwards, I was told to look through this hole in the napkin and tell everybody what I saw. And I remember saying something about my parents were dancing or whatever. And then he played on, getting me to describe it. But that's entertainment hypnosis. I understand that.
Mhm.
But what is it that really gets us as the individual to follow the hypnotic suggestions? Because not everybody seems to be able to be hypnotized.
Actually, everyone is able to be hypnotized.
Really? Okay.
The only thing is you don't know that you're hypnotized. Hypnosis is a trance, a pattern that you're going into. So it's in the simplicity of the whole thing. That's how that works. But the fact that we're hypnotized, our mind has the ability to imagine. So once you can imagine, that's why hypnosis is not always able to be used as a strict reference in a court of law, let's say.
Okay.
So, but what happens is if you imagined it, it could have been described as maybe past lives. So there's many different facets. I actually did a documentary with exactly what you're describing, where that was filmed on stage, and it was Coming Home by a gentleman named Vladimir Kabelek. And taking people past their birth to wherever else they go and describe the environment about that. That's actually how I got into hypnosis. I read a book called Search for Bridie Murphy, and it's about a gentleman who regresses a lady past her birth, and she becomes another character, calls herself Bridie Murphy, and describes all of the places, people, facts, all around her. So what literally happened, that's how the hypnotist recorded that session, and that is a transcription of most of what transpired.
Okay.
Right? So it's that simple, and it happened to be true. So
Okay.
That's what got me to get interested. But the mind is able to create stuff. That's why you dream at night, whether you remember them or not. But talking about being hypnotized, apparently we slip in and out of trance about 14 times a day. So you create a persona, somebody that you are as, and you live out that part. So you would be, let's say, different with your kids than you are with your husband, or salesmen that just came to your door.
Interesting.
So those are trances that you slip in and out. And the best way to describe it is when everybody, you may have driven from point A to point B and not remember how you got there. So basically everything else works, but your mind drifts off and completely blocks out what you're doing, but it's dealing with something else that could be in your head.
Very interesting. Okay. So the next time that I'm driving to the grocery store and I don't remember how I got there, but hopefully I'm still aware of what's going on around me.
Yeah, it's a mild trance that basically takes you out of the moment, but yet you're still completely aware. And talking about having two different sides of the brain, and it's a cool subject that I've been contemplating for a little bit. fish can sleep and swim at the same time.
Interesting.
The same with birds that can sleep with one eye and keep another one open to see if there's any danger coming ahead. So I believe our mind works exactly the same way. The brains are not that different in comparison. It's just there's a part of the brain that actually is aware of what's going on, and there's another part that takes care of all of the other thought that needs processing.
Interesting. So you've been at this for quite a while. You wrote the book. How could our listeners find you if they wanted to know more about you, where you're going to be performing, or if there's any information that you might be able to provide them?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, I have a website, incredibleBoris.com. And just like when we started, my last name is Cherniak. Nobody could pronounce it. So initially I became the Incredible Boris. It was more magical, more exciting. I dropped the magic part and moved on to hypnosis just because that's what's real. The book's available on Amazon or just look online.
Okay.
There's a page on my website. You can actually find it. So incredibleBoris.com. But the book just literally finished and put it out on Audible, iTunes. So if you don't like reading and enjoy listening to something while you're driving, also can find it on Audible and all of the other platforms that present that. And I read it. So that was a really lengthy process, but you'll get my emotion of how I felt about the time, because there's the fun side of the whole thing that's there, but there's also another fun side. One I was just literally thinking of, my career and everything dropped along with the rest of the world, like what you're experiencing probably now at 9/11, when people stopped laughing, stopped having trust in others, and all of a sudden even travel became more cumbersome. I used to be a runner. And I won't, I'll hold for a second so that you try to figure out what a runner is. When the plane was leaving, and let's say 8:59, there was a guy that was running through the airport along with somebody with a walkie-talkie saying, "Hold the plane, he is here."
Yeah.
That's a runner.
Yeah, that's a runner.
Yeah.
Okay.
For many years, and then how do you deal with it? How you reinvent yourself? So everything keeps happening over and over again, just like in your mind. And that's the part that I always want to make sure. But to get back to it, once again, website, incredibleBoris.com. If you can't remember it, Google me. And Google me is, I'm credited with that term, because way back when Google was a little tiny company, smaller than everybody else. I put out a press release, The Incredible Boris says, Google me. And apparently I was the first one. So many years later, Google hired me to perform at their Christmas party.
Oh, how terrific.
Things come around in circle, no matter which way you look at it.
Absolutely. Well, we'll put all this in the show notes. So for those of you who are listening either to the audio or to the video on Zoom, please know that if you go to the show notes, you can't miss out on finding Boris, learning more about him, getting his book. To me, it's really important that we understand it makes no difference where we are on the spectrum of life. We can be the person we want to be. And I am living proof of that, because 10 years ago, I was pushed out of corporate America. I thought, this is horrible. What am I going to do? I'm in my 60s. Nobody's going to want to hire me. And then I realized, wait a second, I just finished my master's degree in communications. And there's this big thing out there called podcasting. Oh, I'm sure I can do it. And I'll tell you, many mistakes were made, but I loved what I was doing. I loved connecting with my guests, and I love connecting with our listeners, because it makes me realize I'm full of life, and that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. And keep in touch. Let us know what's going on. And if you get to Cleveland, I'd love to see you in person.
Thank you. I look forward to it. And I've been to Cleveland many times before and love you people.
Very good. Have a great day.
Thank you.